We're at Bespoked 2024, Europe's largest handmade bike show, and this weekend we're in a Victorian bath in Manchester. Let's go dive in. Right, this is an opportunity for all of the independent frame builders to showcase their work. So we're going to see gorgeous custom paint jobs, some unique styles, and well, let's grab our swim caps and dive in. So I'm here at TJD, or Ted James Design Bikes, and this is a customer's bike, and you can see it's super aggressive, really long, really slack, and a super steep seat angle because he's been winching up those really steep fire roads in the south of Wales and taking this to the Alps. And this is a pretty rugged build. We've got a Cerakote finish here, but the standout piece is obviously there is a pinion gearbox, and Ted's actually fashioned this plate together with the pinion gearbox so that you can adjust the chain tension, but he's got a full suspension bike over there that he's thinking of combining with the pinion gearbox, and this might actually give him the ability to change the bottom bracket height or the geometry on his high pivot full sus, which would be really interesting to see. Can't wait to see that. But in the meantime, this looks super sick actually, and if you look here, the chain doesn't actually wrap around the chainstay, so in theory you could run this with a belt drive if you wanted to. That would be really interesting. And one of the accidental benefits of this design is the down tube is actually elevated, so you can get this massive water bottle in the bottom here because the customer actually uses this for off-road bike packing, and also really elevated chain stays here, kind of almost Alpine Stars vibes here, but that just gives you really massive amounts of clearance in the rear wheel as well. So I'm here at 18 Bikes, who are more known for their hardtails, but they are prototyping full susses and full sus e-bike as well. And what they've gone for is this solid rear swing arm here, which simplifies production a bit because, you know, with an e-bike you're going to need the suspension to be a bit further up and out the way. So naturally going for a high pivot and testing that on both bikes was a natural move for them. But also the solid swing arm just means that they can carry a bunch of swing arms for different sizes and different bikes, and that simplifies production but also simplifies it for the customer if they ever need a replacement. Now it's probably going to look something like this when it comes to production in hopefully 2025, maybe 2026. But it might have an aluminium rear to sort of lighten things up, but at the moment they're working with steel because it's a little easier. And they've got this floating brake rotor at the back there because, well, they said that having a solid swing arm often is said to have some difficulties with braking load, but isolating that with the brake arm up there, they want to see if it actually does make any difference. It might not, but if it does, they're going to keep it on the production model. But it'll be interesting to see what this looks like in a year's time. So I'm here at CDURO at the stand, this wild looking carbon bike. Now this is manufactured in the Czech Republic, but the engineers that have created this, one is based in the UK if you want to chat to him, because this is pretty exciting stuff. Now they're engineers from a carbon manufacturing company that works with this sort of integrated loop technology, which you can see here. This is what you're seeing, and it's effectively winding carbon fibers in this continuous loop all the way around, so you don't actually need a carbon mold like the conventional carbon bikes do, where you have almost like fabric laid up in the mold, which means, well, you can basically get away with that expense of the mold. It simplifies things. Now these are actually ready to be bought if you want to talk to CDURO about getting your own made up. It's a pretty nice looking bike. This is aggressive trail or enduro style. They've gone for a single pivot on the back, and is quite far forward, that pivot, so it's going to be quite sensitive in the rear, and they've built some kind of sort of torsional flex in the front there, so it's going to be nice and sensitive, but also it's going to be ramping up, real supportive in the rear. And another exciting thing is they're actually working with Intend. If you can see here, this leg is actually made out of carbon fiber, which is not normal for Intend, but they're working on a prototype to try and bring out a carbon version. But let me know down in the comments, what do you think? Is this too wild, or do you like it? Oh my God! You see that?
What do you think?
Oh my God, you can just wheel your bike around in like a little package of its own. That is the coolest thing. Here at Craft Bikes, we've seen an additively manufactured and titanium welded bike. Now, we've seen this before if you've watched our other bespoke shows, but we often see this on gravel bikes and road bikes and really flyweight XC bikes. So it's nice to see a proper aggressive mountain bike. We've got 140 pikes up here, 65-degree head angle. So you've got these 3D printed head tubes, the yokes at the back there, and also the dropouts. And this just allows an easier process to weld the titanium tubes together, but it also means that you can get this nice carbon aesthetic. It really cleans things up, so you can have your holes, your ports for your cables 3D printed in the lattice work in the center, and also you don't need a bridge on the yoke at the rear because obviously all the load's taken from the lattice work in the center, and there's loads of options here. So you can have sort of dual port cable holes, which these are also 3D printed, but you can effectively choose to have single ones, and if you change your mind and go from electronic to mechanical for some reason, then you can swap these out and put different ones in. And I just think it's absolutely gorgeous, and you can have it in hundreds of Cerakote colors, which if heat treated is much stronger than paint. But just look at this brush finished. I mean, this has actually been ridden hard. It was really scratched up, and the owner has just hand polished it and brushed it back up to look absolutely brand new. I mean, if I was getting a Thai bike, it would have to be raw. What do you reckon? Let me know down in the comments below. So if you're familiar with BTR, then this will look immediately familiar because it looks just like BTR hardtail, but this is a downhill rig. So the owner has a regular customer, has a couple of bikes, and he wanted a downhill rig, and unfortunately for him, it sent him on a 4-year journey of working out how to create the rear suspension kinematics and also this linkage, which he has CNC machined himself because his suppliers were less than reliable. So he thought, well, I'll just buy a CNC machine and do it myself. How hard could that be? Pretty hard as it as it works out. But what we've got here is obviously it's still in steel, as that's what he likes to work with, the 4130 steel, most of it. And he's gone for a single pivot because obviously a single pivot keeps things nice and simple in terms of maintenance, but once your bearings start to go, if there's loads of bearings in different places, it can give you a bit of slack in the back. That this guy is clearly a serious downhill racer that wouldn't want that, so it's nice and sturdy in the rear. And then what we've got here is obviously linkage driven shock, and he said it's linear progressive, but it's a little more linear than his other suspension bike because he wanted it to feel quite bottomless. But with the EXT shock here, you've obviously got a hydraulic bottom out that can kind of give you a little buffer at the bottom. And there's a lot of nice little details in here. Obviously you've got the bump stop up the top, which you need with dual crown forks, and you've got this nice little cable routing here, and he's managed to CNC machine a lot of the parts around here now that he's got a CNC machine, which means that absolutely everything is in-house, which is really cool. Oh, and he has like used Scotch-Brite to just sort of buff up this link, which I really like. But if you were to buy one, then you could get this anodized either to match the clear Hope parts or get it colored. And by the way, if you do want one, there's only going to be 10 made, so you better make it quick. I've just stolen this bike off the Schwalbe stand because it's really busy down there. But this is from a frame building company called Howler, and Billy, the owner or creator, well, this is his own bike, and he makes bikes, or full sus bikes, out of Reynolds steel, and he's got this really intricate rear suspension kinematic here. Well, I mean, it's not that intricate. It is effectively a linkage driven single pivot in a high pivot configuration here, but he is I guess an aggressive enduro bike park rat, so he's got the small wheels on here, 27.5, and Billy's dad is actually a painter by trade, and if you look at this, it's almost like Raptor paint, which is what we see on cars a lot. It's quite rough and matte finish, and if you look real close, it's got this beautiful dark brown to black fade, and the fade is just absolutely seamless. And how he's got this little shiny window of steel on his logo, I don't really know. I think it might be anodized steel, or perhaps he's coated it beforehand and then laid the paint over the top so he can get the window out. But either way, I just think it looks gorgeous, and it's definitely one of the best head tube badges in the show for sure. Let me know down in the comments below, what do you think? Small wheel, high pivot bike for the win? Sorry. They've sort of engineered some dynamo lights to actually be wired into the frame. That's so cool. Wizardworks making bags in the UK for bike packing. Some great colour schemes in here, even that paint flick one for a good old acid flashback. Dawley Cycles, based in Nottingham, not long down the road from here, and this is Tom, the owner's actual bike. Now, they usually make hardtails out of steel, but he wanted a full sus, but it still kind of has the aesthetic of a hardtail. You see the top tube coming down to the seat tube here, real simple design, but managed to have the linkage far forward enough to keep this seat tube nice and straight for like proper clearance on your dropper post here. So yeah, I think they're working towards getting a rear end sort of more produced and stocked in the back end, so that when you decide you want to come and get a custom steel full sus from Dawley, you can get the front triangle made up and then have a rear triangle ready to go. So I'm here on the Saxony stand, which is actually promoting the area, because Bespoked is going to be in Dresden again this coming October. So if that interests you, go and check it out. And also from Dresden is Dawley Cycles. So naturally, there was one on here. They always make beautiful, clean looking hardtails. I mean, check out that head tube, super curvy. Also, they've got the Ingrid drivetrain on there, almost full drivetrain, no crankset, but they do have the brand new additively manufactured shifter up there, and all of the metal parts that you see are fully CNC machined. Absolutely stunning, look at it. Ah, look at that, that's so cool. Boom! Wow. Didn't expect that, did you? That's so cool. I absolutely love that. That's going to be like Bike Packers #1 tour. So I'm here on the SEIDO stand, and they actually make components out of Germany. So we've got saddles, chain rings, wheel sets, loads of stuff. But what I really like is the forks on this Handmade Droost bike here. And the forks have pannier racks, or the ability to take racks with the bottle bosses on the front. And that's really hard to come by these days, especially in a rigid fork. So ignore the drop bars here. This is definitely a mountain bike. And also, just a little attention to detail. Shame you can't buy these, but the cranks are actually made out of a handmade bike chainstay, like a steel chainstay. It's pretty cool. I know these are road bikes, but the anodizing on these are absolutely insane. Look at that. It really complements those seamless welds on the titanium bike, which is clearly additively manufactured as well. Clandestine make steel tourers and road bikes and off-road cargo bikes kind of like this. So this is the Clandestine Carrier. It can be ran as like a gravel bike or as a road bike if you want to use panniers for your shopping or whatever, but this is for off-road bike packing, obviously. And he's handmade this rack himself. It's given the freedom and the ability to build it around a 2.6-inch tire on a 650B wheel here. Obviously it's pinion gearbox as well, and he's gone for the belt drive, so he's actually had to factor in the split link in the seat stays here, because obviously you need to put the belt on there. And he's also made this sliding plate, a little similar to the Ted James we saw earlier, and he's done that so that you can build the tension into that belt without having to have sliding dropouts. And that means he's been able to use this lovely curvy and clean chainstay here, and he's also managed to build in the dynamo lights into his handmade rack, and I think it looks really smart actually. Shand is a sort of amalgamation of Scottish and hand-built, because these are hand-built in Scotland. And these are steel frames, hand-built obviously, but I wanted to showcase this because these are a more sort of accessible price range. Some of the bikes I'm showing you are between 9 and 12 grand for a full build, whereas this is for a full build from £3,750. Now I know it's got drop bars, but it can actually be a flat bar mountain bike as well. You can have it with steel forks, you can have it with carbon forks with the racking here, or you can have a roll-off built into the back, or you can have a dynamo hub if you want to. I mean, this is a hand-built adventure for all of your adventures out there, and I think it can handle quite a lot of variety. Maybe it's one bike to rule them all, I don't know. Just one thing before I go, obviously this is a carbon belt drive here with the roll-off system. Now generally you need to tension this a little bit, and often people use sliding dropouts, but that would move the rear wheel, which means if you had mud guards everything would clash and it wouldn't work. So actually they've worked with another company to make an eccentric bottom bracket and get the tension dialed in the bottom bracket instead, so they just move the cranks. That's really cool.
What is it?
This is some insane anodizing. Check this out. I think green is like the hardest color to anodize. Look at it. If you don't know who Auckland are, then you haven't watched our other bespoke shows. They've turned up to this show for the last 3 years. So after this video, go and watch our old bespoke shows and find out more about this bike. Wow, what a show. I mean, this is my favorite show of the year for sure. And every year there's just more and more mountain bikes, which is so good to see. Absolutely loving seeing Ted James with his new pinion gearbox, his aggressive adventure mountain bike, and also that craft bike. Never seen those before. That bike was absolutely stunning. But I want to know what you guys think. Out of all the bikes you've seen today, which bike would you go home with if you could? Let me know down in the comments below.